podcast first, and this is the first time I'm reading along with you. So I am finding the podcast much more easier to understand. So do go through. So yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. You can start, Aarti, and anyone else who would like to read can put your names, and you can take after Aarti. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so the third chapter, the core of ego. Most people are so completely identified with the voice in the head, the incessant stream of involuntary and compulsive thinking, and the emotions that accompany it, that we may describe them as being possessed by their mind. As long as you are completely unaware of this, take the thinker to be who you are. This is the egoic mind. We call it egoic because there is a sense of self, of I, ego, in every thought, every memory, every interpretation, opinion, viewpoint, reaction, emotion. This is unconsciousness. Spiritually speaking, you thinking the content of your mind is, of course, conditioned by the past, your upbringing, culture, family background, and so on. The central core of all your mind activity consists of certain repetitive and persistent thoughts, emotions, and reactive patterns that you identify with most strongly. This entity is the ego itself. In most cases, when you say I, it is the ego speaking, not you as we have seen. It consists of thought and emotion, of a bundle of memories you identify with as me and my story, of habitual roles you play without knowing it, of collective identifications such as nationality, religion, race, social class, or political allegiance. It also contains personal identifications not only with possessions but also with opinions, external appearance, long standing resentments, or concept of yourself as better than or not as good as others, as a success or failure. The content of the ego varies from person to person. BU or B is every ego. B in every ego, the same structure operates. In other words, egos only differ on the surface. Deep down, they are all the same. In what way are they the same? They live on identification and separation. When you live through the mind made self comprised of thoughts and emotion, that is the ego. The basis of your ego identity is precarious because thought and emotion are by their very nature ephemeral, flighting. So every ego is continuously struggling for survival, trying to protect and enlarge itself. To uphold the I thought, it needs the opposite thought of the other. The conceptual I cannot survive without the conception other. The others are most other when I speak them as my enemies. At one end of this scale of this unconscious egoic pattern lies the egoic compulsive habit of fault finding and complaining about others. Jesus referred to it when he said, "Why do you do see the speck that is in your move it up brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye?" At the other end of the scale, there is physical violence between individual and warfare between nations. In the Bible, Jesus' question remains unanswered, but the answer is, of course, because when I criticize or condemn another, it makes me feel bigger, superior. Somebody please take over.
Yeah, anyone wants to read, or I can read also if
I
no one
can
is.
read.
Yeah, go on, go on. Yeah, and others, please type your name in the chat box so we know.
Okay, I'll start from this complaining and resentment. Complaining is one of the ego's favorite strategies for strengthening itself. Every complaint is a little story the mind makes up that you completely believe in. Whether you complain aloud or only in thought makes no difference. Some egos that perhaps don't have much else to identify with easily survive on complaining alone. When you are in the grip of such an ego, complaining, especially about other people, is habitual and, of course, unconscious, which means you don't know what you are doing. Applying negative mental labels to people either to their face or more commonly when you speak about them to others or even just think about them is often part of this pattern. Name calling is the crudest form of such labeling and of the ego's need to be right and triumph over others. Jerk, bastard, bitch, all definitive pronouncements that you can't argue with. On the next level down on the scale of unconsciousness, you have shouting and screaming, and not much below that, physical violence. Resentment is the emotion that that goes with complaining and the mental labeling of people and adds even more energy to the ego. Resentment means to feel bitter, indignant, aggrieved, or offended. You resent other people's greed, their dishonesty, their lack of integrity, what they are doing, what they did in the past, what they said, what they failed to do, what they should or shouldn't have done. The ego loves it. Instead of overlooking unconsciousness in others, you make it into their identity. Who is doing that? The unconsciousness in you, the ego. Sometimes the fault that you perceive in another isn't even there. It's a total misinterpretation, a projection by a mind conditioned to see enemies and to make itself right or superior. At other times, the fault may be there, but by focusing on it, sometimes to the exclusion of everything else, you amplify it. Wow. I'm going to read this again. At other times, the fault may be there, but by focusing on it, sometimes to the exclusion of everything else, you amplify it. And what you react to in another, you strengthen in yourself. Wow, this is very profound. Non reaction to the ego in others is one of the most effective ways, not only of going beyond ego in yourself, but also of dissolving the collective human ego. But you can only be in a state of non reaction if you can recognize someone's behavior as coming from the ego, as being an expression of the collective human dysfunction. When you realize it's not personal, there is no longer a compulsion to react as if it were. Wow. By not reacting to the ego, you will often be able to bring out the sanity in others, which is the unconditioned consciousness as opposed to the conditioned. At times, you may have to take practical steps to protect yourself from deeply unconscious people. This you can do without making them into enemies. Your greatest protection, however, is being conscious. Somebody becomes an enemy if you personalize the unconsciousness, that is the ego. Non reaction is not weakness, but strength. Another word for non reaction is forgiveness. To forgive is to overlook, or rather, to look through. Wow. You look through the ego to the sanity that is in every human being as his or her essence. The ego loves to complain and feel resentful, not only about other people, but also about situations. What you can do to a person, you can also do to a situation. Make it into an enemy. The implication is always this should not be happening. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. I am being treated unfairly. And the ego's greatest enemy of all is, of course, the present moment, which is to say, life itself. Complaining is not to be confused with informing someone of a mistake or deficiency so that it can be put right. Wow, this is very, very important. And to refrain from complaining doesn't necessarily mean putting up with bad quality or behavior. There is no ego in telling the waiter that your soup is cold and needs to be heated up. If you stick to the facts, which are always neutral, how dare you serve me cold soup? That's complaining. There is a me here that loves to feel personally offended by the cold soup and is going to make the most of it. A me that enjoys making someone wrong. Wow. I feel like every line is highlight
Yes,
worthy.
yes, yeah.
Uh, the complaining we are talking about is in the service of the ego, not of change. Sometimes it becomes obvious that the ego doesn't really want change so that it can go on complaining. See if you can catch, that is to say, notice the voice in the head. Perhaps in the very moment it complains about something and recognize it for what it is, the voice of the ego, no more than a conditioned mind pattern, a thought. Whenever you notice that voice, you will also realize that you are not the voice, but the one who is aware of it. In fact, you are the awareness that is aware of the voice. Wow. In the background, there is the awareness. In the foreground, there is the voice, the thinker. In this way, you are becoming free of the ego, free of the unobserved mind. The moment you become aware of the ego in you, it is strictly speaking no longer the ego, but just an old conditioned mind pattern. Ego implies unawareness. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. Wow. The old mind pattern or mental habit may still survive and reoccur for a while because it has the momentum of thousands of years of collective human unconsciousness behind it. But every time it is recognized, it is weakened. I'm going to repeat this last line. The old mind pattern or mental habit may still survive and reoccur for a while because it has the momentum of thousands of years of collective human unconsciousness behind it. But every time it is recognized, it is weakened. Reactivity and grievances. Whereas resentment is often the emotion that goes with complaining, it may also be accompanied by a stronger emotion such as anger or some other form of upset. In this way, it becomes more highly charged energetically. Complaining then turns into reactivity, another of the ego's ways of strengthening itself. There are many people who are always waiting for the next thing to react against, to feel annoyed or disturbed about, and it never takes long before they find it. This is an outrage, they say. How dare you? I resent this. They are addicted to upset and anger as others are to a drug. Through reacting against this or that, they assert and strengthen their feeling of self. A long standing resentment is called a grievance. To carry a grievance is to be in a permanent state of against. And that is why grievances constitute a significant part of many people's ego. Collective grievances can survive for centuries in the psyche of a nation or tribe and fuel a never ending cycle of violence. Wow. A grievance is a strong negative emotion connected to an event in the sometimes distant past that is being kept alive by compulsive thinking, by retelling the story in the head or out loud of what someone did to me or what someone did to us. A grievance will also contaminate other areas of your life. For example, while you think about and feel your grievance, its negative emotional energy can distort your perception of an event that is happening in the present or influence the way in which you speak or behave towards someone in the present. One strong grievance is enough to contaminate large areas of your life and keep you in the grip of the ego. It requires honesty to see whether you still harbor grievances, whether there is someone in your life you have not completely forgiven, an enemy. If you do, become aware of the grievance, both on the level of thought as well as emotion. That is to say, be aware of the thoughts that keep it alive and feel the emotion that is the body's response to those thoughts. Don't try to let go of the grievance. Trying to let go to forgive does not work. Forgiveness happens naturally when you see that it has no purpose other than to strengthen a false sense of self to keep the ego in place. The seeing is freeing. Jesus' teaching to forgive your enemies is essentially about the undoing of one of the main egoic structures in the human mind. The past has no power to stop you from being present now. Only your grievance about past can do that. Wow. The past has no power to stop you from being present now. Only your grievance about the past can do that. And what is a grievance? The baggage of old thought and emotion. Wow. Yeah, the next person can take over.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Pallavi, you want to go?
Um, yes, पहले आप पढ़ लो, then I will. Yeah.
Okay, okay, chalo. Being right, making wrong. Complaining as well as fault finding and reactivity strengthen the ego's sense of boundary and separateness on which its survival depends. But they also strengthen the ego in another way by giving it a feeling of superiority on which it thrives. It may not be immediately apparent how complaining, say about a traffic jam, about politicians, about the greedy wealthy, or the lazy unemployed, or your colleague or ex spouse, man or woman, can give you a sense of superiority. Here is why. When you complain, by implication, you are right, and the person or situation you complain about or react is against is wrong. There is nothing that strengthens the ego more than being right. Being right is identification with a mental position, a perspective, an opinion, a judgment, a story. For you to be right, of course, you need someone else to be wrong. And so the ego loves to make wrong in order to be right. In other words, you need to make others wrong in order to get a stronger sense of who you are. Not only a person, but also a situation can be made wrong through complaining and reactivity, which always implies that this should not be happening. Being right places you in a position of imagined moral superiority in relation to the person or situation that is being judged and found wanting. It is that sense of superiority the ego craves, that through which it enhances itself. In defense of an illusion, facts undoubtedly exist. If you say light travels faster than sound and someone else says the opposite is the case, you're obviously right and he is wrong. The simple observation that lightning precedes thunder could confirm this. Not only are you right, but you know you are right. Is there any ego involved in this? Possibly, but not necessarily. If you are simply stating what you know to be true, the ego is not involved at all. because there is no identification. Identification with what? With mind and a mental position. Such identification, however, can easily creep in. If you find yourself saying, "Believe me, I know," or why do you never believe me?" Then the ego has already crept in. It is hiding in the little word me. Wow, this was very profound. A simple statement, light is faster than sound, although true, is now in service of illusion of ego. It has become contaminated with a false sense of I. It has become personalized, turned into a mental position. The I feels diminished or offended because someone doesn't believe what I said. Ego takes everything personally. Emotion arises, defensiveness, perhaps even aggression. Are you defending the truth? No, the truth is in case needs no defense. The light or sound does not care about what you or anybody else thinks. You are defending yourself, or rather, the illusion of yourself, the mind made substitute. It would be even more accurate to say that the illusion is defending itself. If even the simple and straightforward realm of facts can lead itself to egoic distortion and illusion, how much more so the less tangible realm of opinions, viewpoints, and judgments, all of them thought forms that can easily become infused with a sense of I. Every ego confuses opinions and viewpoints with facts. Furthermore, it cannot tell the differences between an event and its reaction to that event. Every ego is a master of selective perception and distortion interpretation. Only through awareness, not through thinking, can you differentiate between fact and opinion. Only through awareness are you able to see there is a situation and here is the anger I feel about it. And then realize that realize there are other ways of approaching the situation, other ways of seeing it and dealing with it. Only through awareness can you see the totality of the situation or person instead of adopting one limited perspective. Okay, yeah, Palay, you can take off from me. Anyone else wants to read? Put your names, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Truth relative or absolute? Beyond the realms of simple and verifiable fact, the certainty that I am right and you are wrong is a dangerous thing in personal relationship as well as in interaction between nations, tribe, religion, and so on. But if the belief, I am right, you are wrong, is one of the ways in which the ego strengthens itself in making yourself right and other wrong, is a mental dysfunction that perpetuates separation and conflict between human beings. Does that mean there is no such thing as right or wrong behavior, action, or belief? And wouldn't that be the moral relativism that some contemporary Christian teachings see as the great evil of our times? The history of Christianity is, of course, a prime example of how the belief that you are in a sole possession of the truth, that is to say, right, can corrupt your action and behavior to the point of insanity. For centuries, torturing and burning people alive is the opinion, diverse even in the slightest form from church doctrine or narrow interpretation of scriptures. The truth was considered right because the victims were wrong. They were so wrong that they needed to be killed. The truth was considered more important than human life. And what was the truth? A story you had to believe in, which means a bundle of thoughts. The 1 million people and mad dictator Pol Pot of Cambodia ordered, killed, included everybody who wore glasses. Why? To him, the Marxist interpretation of history was the absolute truth. And according to his version of it, those who wore glasses belonged to the educated class, the Borogues.
Borgiossi, I guess, but it's okay. You can move on. Go on, go on.
The Morgues, the exploiters of the peasants. They needed to be eliminated to make room for the social order. His truth also was a bundle of thoughts. The Catholic and other churches are actually correct when they identify relativism, the belief that there is no absolute truth to guide human behavior, as one of the evil of our times. But you won't find absolute truth if you look for it where it cannot be found. In doctrines, ideology, set of rules or stories. What do you all of these have in common? They are made up of thoughts. Thoughts can at best point to the truth, but it never is the truth. That is why Buddhist says the finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. All religion are equally false and truly true, depending on how you use them. You can use them in the service of the ego, or you can use them in the service of truth. If you believe only your region is truth, you are using it in the service of ego. Use in such a way, religion become ideology and create an illusory sense of superiority as well as the diversion and conflict between peoples. If the service of truth religion teaching represents signpost on map, find behind an awakened human to assist you in spiritual awakening, that is to say, in becoming free of identification with form. There is only one absolute truth, and all other truth ema- emanate from it. When you find a truth, your action will be in alignment with it. Human action can reflect the truth, or it can reflect illusion. Can the truth be put into words? Yes. But the words are, of course, not it, they only point to it. The truth is inseparable from who you are. Yes, you are the truth. If you look for it elsewhere, you will deceived every time. The very being that you are is truth. Jesus tried to convey that when he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. These words uttered by Jesus are one of the most powerful and direct pointers to the truth, if you understood correctly. If misinterpreted, however, they become a great obstacle. Jesus speak of the innermost. I am the essence identity of every man and woman, every every life form. In fact, he speaks of the life that you are. Some Christian m- mystics have called it Christ within. Buddhists call it Buddha nature. For Hindus, it is Atman, the indwelling God. When you are in touch with the dimension within yourself, and being in touch with it is your natural state, not some miraculous achievements. All your action and relationship will reflect the oneness with all life that you seen deep within. Sorry, all your action and relationship with will reflect the oneness with all life that you sense deep within. This is love. Law, commandments, rules, and regulations are necessary for those who are cut off from who they are, the truth within. They prevent the worst excesses of the ego, and often they don't even do that. Love and do what you will. Said Augustine, word cannot get closer to the truth than that. Thank you.
Yeah. Srividya, you can take over.
The ego is not personal. On a collective level, the mindset, we are right and they are wrong, is particularly deeply entrenched in those parts of the world where conflict between two nations, races, tribes, religions, or ideologies is long-standing, extreme, and endemic. Both sides of the conflict are equally identified with their own perspective, their own story. That is to say, identified with thought. Both are equally incapable of seeing that another perspective, another story may exist and also be valid. Israeli writer Halevi speaks of the possibility of accommodating a competing narrative. But in many parts of the world, people are not yet able or willing to do that. Both sides believe to be in possession of the truth. Both regard themselves as victims and the other as evil, and because they have conceptualized and therefore dehumanize the other as the enemy, they can kill and inflict all kinds of violence on the other, even on children, without feeling their humanity and suffering. They become trapped in an insane spiral of perpetration and retribution, action and reaction. Here it becomes obvious that the human ego, in its collective aspect as us against them, is even more insane than the me, the individual ego, although the mechanism is the same. By far, the greater part of violence that humans have inflicted on each other is not the work of criminals or the mentally deranged, but of normal, respectable citizens in the service of the collective ego. One can go far as to say that on this planet, normal equals insane. What is this? What is it that lies at the root of this insanity? Complete identification with thought and emotion, that is to say, ego. Greed, selfishness, exploitation, cruelty, and violence are still all pervasive on this planet. When you don't recognize them as individual and collective manifestations of an underlying dysfunction or mental illness, you fall into the error of personalizing them. You construct a conceptual identity for for an individual or a group, and you say, "This is who he is. This is who they are." When you confuse the ego that you perceive in others with their identity, it is the work of your own ego that uses this misperception to strengthen itself through being right and therefore superior, and through reacting with condemnation, indignation, and other anger against the perceived enemy. All this is enormously satisfying to the ego. It strengthens the sense of separation between yourself and the other, whose otherness has become magnified to such an extent that you can no longer feel your common humanity nor the rootedness in the one life that you share with each human being, your common divinity. The particular egoic patterns that you react to most strongly in others and misperceive as their identity tend to be the same patterns that are also in you, but that you are unable or unwilling to detect within yourself. In that sense, you have much more to learn from your enemies. What is it in them that you find most upsetting, most disturbing? Their selfishness, their greed, their need for power and control, their insincerity, dishonesty, propensity to violence, or whatever it may be. Anything that you resent and strongly react to in another is also in you. But it is no more than a form of ego, and as such, it is completely impersonal. It has nothing to do with who that person is, nor has it anything to do with who you are. Only if you mistake it for who you are can observing it within you be threatening to your sense of self. War is a mindset. In certain cases, you may need to protect yourself or someone else from being harmed by another, but beware of making it your mission to eradicate evil, as you are likely to turn into the very thing you are fighting against. Fighting unconsciousness will draw you into unconsciousness yourself. Unconsciousness, dysfunctional egoic behavior, can never be defeated by attacking it. Even if you defeat your opponent, the unconsciousness will simply have moved into you, or the opponent reappears in a new disguise. Whatever you fight, you strengthen, and whatever you resist, persists. These days, you frequently hear the expression, the war against this or that. And whenever I hear it, I know it is condemned to failure. There is the war against drugs, the war against crime, the war against terrorism, the war against cancer, the war against poverty, and so on. For example, despite the war against crime and drugs, there has been a dramatic increase in crime and drug related offenses in the past 25 years. The prison population of the United States has gone up from just under 300,000 in 1980 to a staggering 2.1 million in 2004. The war against disease has given us, among other things, antibiotics. At first, they were spectacularly successful, seemingly enabling us to win the war against infectious diseases. Now, many experts agree that the widespread and indiscriminate use of antibiotics has created a time bomb, and that antibiotic resistant strain of bacteria, so called superbugs, will in all likelihood bring about a re emergence of those diseases and possibly epidemics. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, medical treatment is the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer in the United States. Homeopathy and Chinese medicine are two examples of possible alternative approaches to disease that do not treat the illness as an enemy and therefore do not create new diseases. Can somebody else read? Or I can just finish the two paragraphs.
Oh, yeah.
War is a mindset, and all action that comes out of such a mindset will either strengthen the enemy, the perceived evil, or if the war is won, will create a new enemy, a new evil equal to and often worse than the one that was defeated. There is a deep interrelatedness between your state of consciousness and external reality. When you are in the grip of a mindset such as war, your perceptions become extremely selective as well as distorted. In other words, you will see only what you want to see and then misinterpret it. You can imagine what kind of action comes out of such a delusional system. Or instead of imagining it, watch the news on TV tonight. Recognize the ego for what it is, a collective dysfunction, the insanity of the human mind. When you recognize it for what it is, you no longer misperceive it as someone's identity. Once you see the ego for what it is, it becomes much easier to remain non reactive towards it. You don't take it personally anymore. There is no complaining, blaming, accusing, or making wrong. Nobody is wrong. It is the ego in someone, that's all. Compassion arises when you recognize that all are suffering from the same sickness of the mind, some more acutely than others. You do not fuel the drama anymore that is part of all egoic relationships. What is its fuel? Reactivity. The ego thrives on it.
Okay, I think we'll stop here. I'll just check how much. This is also interesting and very much in alignment. Okay, we'll read one more para that is there because it's in alignment with what we read. Uh, just a minute. The chapter is still long. No, it's actually not long. Do we
We
want to
only have
finish it?
8. Yeah, we have 8, I think less than 8 pages or around 8 pages.
Yeah, actually, in my PDF, like the one I'm reading, it's not even 8, it's like 2 pages. So let's
Yeah,
finish it.
I
It will
think
take a
finish it.
little. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe the discussion we can keep it very, very short today and maybe discuss a little tomorrow. Then we can take up this thing. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Anyone wants to read next?
I can read this from
Yeah, yeah. Please go on. Yeah, yeah. Go on.
beyond ego, your true identity. When the ego is at war, know that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we have to start from do you want peace or drama?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
sorry. I put the wrong page on screen. Yeah, it's by mistake. Yeah. Go on, doctor. Yes, Satish sorry. Yeah.
Do you want peace or drama? You want peace. There's no one who does not want peace. Yet there's something else in you that wants drama, wants the conflict. You may not be able to feel it at this moment. You may have to wait for a situation or even just a thought that triggers a reaction in you. Someone accusing you of this or that, not acknowledging you, encroaching on your territory, questioning the way you do things, an argument about money, can you then feel the enormous surge of force between you you, the fear perhaps being masked by anger and hostility. Can you hear your own voice becoming harsh or shrill or louder and a few octaves slower? Can you be aware of your mind racing to defend its position, justify, attack, blame? In other words, can you awaken at that moment of unconsciousness? Can you feel that there's something in you that is at war, something that feels threatened and wants to survive at all cost? That need the drama in order to assert its identity as the victorious character within the theatrical production. Can you feel there is something in you that would rather be right than at peace? Please. Yes. Beyond ego, your true identity. When the ego is at war, know that it is no more than an illusion that is fighting to survive. The illusion thinks it is you. It is not easy at first to be there as the witnessing presence, especially when the ego is in survival mode or some emotional pattern from past has become activated. But once you have had a taste of it, you will grow in presence power and the ego will lose its grip on you. So a power comes into your life that is far greater than the ego, greater than the mind. All that is required to become free of the ego is to be aware of it. Since awareness and ego are incompatible, awareness is the power that is concealed within the present moment. That is why we may also call it presence. Ultimate purpose of human existence, which is to say, your purpose is to bring the power into this world. Uh, yes. And this is also why becoming free of the ego cannot be made into a goal to be attained at some point in future. Only presence can free you of the ego, and you can only be present. Now, not yesterday or tomorrow. Only presence can undo the past in you and thus transform your state of consciousness. What is spiritual realization? The belief that you are spirit. No, that's a thought. A little closer to the truth than the thought that believes you are who your birth certificate says you are, but still a thought. Spiritual realization is to see clearly what I perceive, experience, think, or feel is ultimately not who I am, that I cannot find myself in those things that continuously pass away. The Buddha was probably the first human being to see this clearly, and so Ananta Anatta became one of the central points of his teaching. And when Jesus said, "Deny thyself," what he meant was negate and thus undo the illusion of self. If the self ego were truly who I am, it would be absurd to deny it. What remains is the light of consciousness in which perceptions, experiences, thoughts, and feelings come and go. That is being. That is deeper, true, true I. When I know myself as that, whatever happens in my life is no longer of absolute but only of relative importance. I honor it, but it loses its absolute seriousness, its heaviness. The only thing that ultimately matters is this: can I sense my essential beingness, the I am, in the background of my life at all times? To be more accurate, can I sense the I am that I am at this moment? Can I sense my essential identity as consciousness itself? Or am I losing myself in what happens, losing myself in the mind, in the world? All
I
is
think Dr. Sandesh wants to read as well. And I think this is the last part. So if you want to take over, yeah. You want to read a little more,
no, no, it's
Satyajit?
fine. It's okay.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. I'll just put it on screen. We are going a little off our time today. So please excuse us for that. We're just tempted to finish the chapter since it's just 2 pages left or 1.5 page. Yeah, doctor, please read.
Okay, can I start?
Yeah, go on.
All structures are unstable. Whatever form it takes, the unconscious drive behind ego is to strengthen the image of who I think I am. The fattened self that came into existence when thought, a great blessing as well as the great curse, began to take over the obscure, the simple yet powerful joy of connectedness with being, the source God. Whatever behavior the ego manifests, the hidden motivating force is always the same. The need to stand out, be special, be in control, the need of power, for attention, for more. And of course, the need to feel the sense of separation, that is to say, the need of opposition, enemies. The ego always wants something from people or situations. There is always a hidden agenda, always a sense of not enough yet, always a hidden agenda of always a sense of not enough yet, of insufficiency and lack that needs to be fulfilled. It uses people and situation to get what it wants, and even when it succeeds, it never satisfied for long. Often it is thwart it in its aims, and for more of the most part, the gap between I want and what is becomes a constant source of upset and anguish. The famous and now classic pop song, I Can't Get On Satisfaction, is the song of the ego, the underlying emotion that governs all the activity of, of the ego is fear. The fear of being nobody, the fear of non existence, the fear of death. All its activities are ultimately designed to eliminate this fear. Mansi ji, can you just go slow in keeping the rolling the PDF upwards so that I get the PDF is going maximum up. I
Okay,
can't.
okay. Is
The
it okay
fear,
now?
it's okay now. The fear of death. All its activities are ultimately designed to eliminate this fear. But the most of the ego can ever do is to cover it up temporarily with an intimate relationship, a new possession, or winning at this or that. Illusion will never satisfy you. Only the truth of who you are, if realized, will set you free. Why fear? Because the ego arises by identification with form. And deep down, it knows that no form are permanent, that they are all fleeting. So there is always a sense of insecurity around the ego when it is, if on the outside, it appears confident. As I was walking with a friend through the beautiful nature, rivers, reserve near Malibu in California, we came upon the ruins of what had been once a country house, destroyed by a fire several decades ago. As we approached the property, long overgrown with trees and all kinds of magnificent plants, there was a sign of a side of a trail put there by park authorities. It read, Danger. All structures are unstable. I repeat, danger. All structures are unstable. I said to my friend, that's a profound sutra, sacred scripture. And we stood there in a awe. Once you realize, all accept that all structures, forms are unstable, even the seemingly solid materials ones. Peace arises within you. This is because the recognition of the impermanence of all forms awakens you to the definition of the formless within yourself, that which is beyond death. Jesus called it eternal life. I repeat, Jesus called it eternal life. The egos need to feel superior. The egos need to feel superior. There are many subtle but easily overlooked forms of ego that you may observe in other people and, more important, in yourself. Remember, the moment you become aware of the go in yourself, that emerging awareness is who you are beyond ego and deeper I. The recognition of the false is already the rising of the real. For example, you are about to tell someone the news of what happened. Guess what? You don't know yet. Let me tell you, if you are alert enough, present enough, you may be able to detect a momentary sense of satisfaction within yourself just before imparting the news, even if it is bad news. It is due to the fact that for a brief moment there is in the eyes of the ego, and it is derived from feeling of a stronger sense of relative to other person, even if he or she is the president of the or the pope. You feel superior in that moment because you know more. Many people are addicted to gossiping partly for this reason. In addition, gossiping often carries an element of malicious criticism and judgment of others, and so it is also strengthens the ego through the implied but imagined moral superiority that is there whenever you apply a negative judgment to anyone. If someone has more, knows more, or can do more than I, ego feels threatened because the feeling of less diminishes its imagined sense of selective relative to the other. Wow. If someone has more, know more, and can do more than I repeat, if someone has more, knows more, and can do more than I, the ego feels threatened because the feeling of less diminishes its imagined sense of self relative to the other. It may then try to restore itself by somehow diminishing, criticizing, or belittling the value of the other person's possessions, knowledge, or abilities. Or the ego may shift its and strategy, and instead of competing with the other person, it will enhance itself by association with that person if he or she is important in the eyes of the others. Anyone else wants to take up? Oh, okay, I'll read it.
But yeah, if anyone wants to read, anyone?
I'll continue.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Ego and fame. The well known phenomenon of name dropping, the casual mention of who you know, is part of the ego's strategy of gaining a superior identity in the eye of the others and therefore in its own eyes through association with someone important. The bane of being famous in this world is that who you are becomes totally obscured by the collective mental image. Most people you meet want to enhance their identity, the mental image of who they are, though through association with you. They themselves may not know that they are not interested in you at all, but only in strengthening their ultimate fictitious, fictitious sense of self. They believe that though through you, they can be more. They are looking to complete themselves through you, or rather, through the mental image they have of you as a famous person, a larger than life, collective conceptual identity. That's good. Overvaluation of fame is just one of the many manifestations of egoic madness in our world. Some famous people fall into the same error and identity with a collective fiction, the image people and the media have created of them, and they begin to actually see themselves as a superior to ordinary mortals. As a result, they become more and more alienated for themselves and the others, more and more unhappy, more and more dependent on their continuing popularity, surrounded only by people who feed their inflated self image. They become incapable of genuine relationships. Albert Einstein, who was admired as almost superhuman, and whose fate it was to become one of the most famous people on the planet, never identified with the image of collective mind had created of him. He remained humble, egoless. In fact, he spoke of grotesque contradictions between what people considered to be my achievements and my inabilities and reality of who I am and what I am capable of. This is why it is hard for a famous person to be in genuine relationship with others. A genuine relationship is one that is not dominated by the ego with its image making and self seeking. In a genuine relationship, there is an outward flow of open, alert attention towards the other person, in which there is no wanting whatsoever. That alert attention is presence. It is the prerequisite of any authentic relationship. Please note, it is the prerequisite of any authentic relationship. That alert attention is presence. The ego always either wants something or if it believes there is nothing to get from the other, it is a state of utter indifference. It doesn't care about you. And so the three predominant states of egoic relationship are wanting, thwarted, wanting, anger, resentment, blaming, complaining, and indifference. Mansi?
Yeah, we're done. We're done. Yeah, let's stop here. And sorry, we just extended time. I miscalculated it. It's my mistake. So maybe we could have stopped a little earlier. And if we want to share something quick, we can do that before we leave. And today, let's keep the discussion very short. I would request everyone who would like to speak to not take more than a minute today, and we can elaborate on this tomorrow if we want before reading. But let's stop earlier, and then I'll share the podcast episode also related to this chapter, so you can go through that. So yeah, anyone wants to say something quick before we leave about this was a profound chapter, in fact, and it will take a longer discussion. Do we want to keep tomorrow for discussion, like more discussion, so that we reflect upon this before we go further with the book? Yeah, Richa, yeah, please do that. Like today also, I was aware of
Maybe
the time, but I just assumed that we
no,
might finish. Yeah,
no,
but that
it's
was
okay,
wrong.
and I think it's fine. No, because it was very few pages. What we can do is, I mean, I'm just suggesting we can keep it. I can keep the time. I can remind everyone in like after 10 minutes. that we can stop discussion for today and we can resume discussion tomorrow so that we are not going overboard, right, with the morning
I think
time.
because we covered the chapter upon ego, right? Last two chapters were on ego, and that is a profound thing. I think let's do this. Like, let's go a little different. Today we'll just discuss if you have anything burning, like anything that just popped up and you want to share with the group. You do that. But tomorrow we'll keep a little time for reflection for this topic. That is overall ego. I would request go through the podcast. The first one, if you have not watched it already, first episode, but second and third, which I will share today, the third one, that one and the one I shared before, that both are on ego. So let's discuss a little deeper on the topic ego tomorrow before we go further with the next reading. Is that okay with everyone? So that we have time for the discussion of today's and chapter before that also. Anyone who has not read the second chapter, and if you would want to catch up on that chapter, I would highly insist, please do. And we can just elaborate on this tomorrow before we go further. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty deep subject, so it's not like just reading every chapter in one day, and
Yeah, yeah.
I think we have to give it some time to digest also. Just my
I
thought.
do. That's the reason. But the reason is we're trying to keep the discussions minimum is because many a times what happens when we discuss too much, the reflection gets hampered because we reflect less and we discuss more. So that is the thing. But yeah, let's do this for this one chapter. Let's see how it goes. And then further for the book, we'll decide how to go about it. Since we're also out of time today and we won't get enough time to discuss, like normally we give 20 minutes for discussion. So that is anyways not happening today. So we might keep tomorrow for that and we'll read a little part of whatever we can from the third next chapter tomorrow and then continue further. That's I hope it's okay with everyone else also, apart from Vidya and Richa, uh, who has agreed to it. Richa, you are okay with it? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm completely okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? So we'll keep a little part tomorrow in the initially. We'll come prepared and talk about it. Let's have some reflections also, right? Like, where do we find ego popping up in our own life or any incidences, anything that you can relate, we can relate with. So some reflections would be helpful to think through. And also, yeah, before that, anyone wants to share something from today's reading, or you just want to go back and just reflect and come back tomorrow prepared, more with some more shares.
I just had one quick thing. It's not even a reflection per se, but a very quick, happy response that I had because I've been seeking an answer to something that I have been, you know, I will not say struggling with, but something that I've been trying to seek an answer for, depending on relations and how to get above this level. I mean, above, not in the sense of above or below, but getting rid of that need to feel unsafe or whatever around people, right, and just experience things, as I think the author was saying, like once you get to a level where it just passes by, right, the experiences and all of this is also not what's important. It's the awareness that it is just passing by. But to get to that level, like he has suggested few things which I can reflect on tomorrow because I also want to reread it. But I found some answers, so I was very happy. Maybe it is my ego. I do recognize that, but I'm just glad. Happy is probably a superficial word, but I am also at peace because peace is something we all want and seek, right? Uh, because I was literally trying to formulate few things and was also planning to ask some of the mentors that I look up to seek those answers. But before that, I wanted to formulate, exactly how I want to put my question, and I got the answer today from the book. So that was very helpful, and I'm going to reflect more on it, and I'll share more on it tomorrow.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we're looking forward it. So let's do one thing tomorrow. Let's focus more on discussion of the topic ego, So whatever is our understanding, any other references apart from the book that we would want to bring forth and share with others, any codes, anything that you have understood and related with. So we'll just discuss on that tomorrow. It's an interesting topic, and let's do this thing. Like we'll as we have decided to go a little slow with this particular book because it's a kind of a deep book, and as Vidya rightly said, we need to digest it equally, not just read it, and this is an important thing. So let's keep tomorrow for discussion, and we'll discuss the first three chapters. So anyone who has missed anything, just go through them, listen to the podcast, whatever is possible for you. So you have some deeper shares and something to say, talk about. And let's do that tomorrow, and then let's see if time allows. We'll start with the next chapter, or we'll start it from day after. So that way we can go a little deeper and understand each other's perspectives and learn from each other also. So yeah, let's do that. And yeah, that was great. Even I have a few shares, but I'll keep it for tomorrow. And who else? Anyone wants to share something else before we wind up for today? I could relate with a lot of things that were shared in the chapter today, but yes, I'll share tomorrow. Something popped up, some things. So just before we leave, just one line I would want to add is, as it's very beautifully explained by Eckhart Tolle, that ego, and today he talks more about the superiority of the ego, at least, but I don't know where I heard it, but yeah, he does talk about grieving, right? So it's also about when we feel inferior also, that there is a ego, wherever feel separation from someone else, it is ego. And drama and everything he mentioned all. We'll discuss it in depth tomorrow. But I just wanted to point that one thing out which I had read earlier. I'll remind it tomorrow also. So we watched this movie by The Shift by Wayne Dyer, and in that he says ego is ego, which is edge God out. So it's basically some anything that separates us from God. So which the divine qualities or divine thing that is within us, when that is put out, that is ego. We are not operating through that divine self, but we are operating through something else that is called ego, is according to Wayne Dyer. So I remembered that, and so just thought of sharing before we leave. So yeah, anyone else? Nothing. I think I we are all okay to go. So, okay, then let's see you all tomorrow, and let's come up with some reflections to share, and some profound things, so that we get we have some very, very deep discussion tomorrow. It's a very beautiful topic we all have to deal with, right, on a day-to-day basis. So please, let's go through, let's do some homework and come back tomorrow. So thank you. See you all. Bye bye. Take care.
See you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. See you. Have a great day.
Hi, Shilpa.